really strange. Well, it's been quite repetitive, hasn't it? Trying to claim that something is strange, trying to say that a place is a way, trying to say that a thing is a... Anyway, I've been existing in a series of events which seem repetitive even though they are nuanced and different. It's the differences between a week being such small things sometimes as the choices between what you do and do not end up actually doing. Between listening to your plans and not listening to them. And it's the type of thing where most people would have been ruled to have given up on something. But I haven't technically yet. I am existing at where most people would have been ruled as set in one way. But I'm still finding ways to break out every now and again of this role in constructive ways rather than destructive as I would have normally in the past. I'm finding myself drawn to very small, subtle changes, but they are still changes, and they are still types of growth in their own way. It's a thing where you see the differences in yourself, but only if they're reflected through others. But I've also had a difficulty in accepting when people say that there has been a change, because it's hard for me to trust people these days. Even the people that have been around for as long as they possibly can, the people that are not going to be leaving my life until they leave this earth, I sometimes still feel that their views and opinions aren't necessarily wrong per se, but aren't a full encapsulation of understanding my situation. Even though they know me probably about just as much as I know myself. It's a very weird place, but life is a weird place. Life is this weird sequence of events that are meaningless, that we add meaning to, that we create value for, that we try and say, oh, this happens because of this, or that's clearly not the case. It's not about it's a lot of false equivocation, making things appear valuable, because otherwise we would slowly go insane. We would find ourselves drawn to answers that don't add up. So we try and say, oh, these small things are more important, where honestly most things are unimportant. Most things are meaningless. So then what does that leave life as? It's not that life itself is meaningless. It's not that the actions themselves are actually truly meaningless. It's that they don't mean anything past what they are. And what they are isn't always necessarily useful to society in a typical way. What I mean to say by that is there are things that exist that their purpose is themselves rather than trying to help. Their purpose is selfish, I suppose would be an easy way to put it. And there's a certain something to be said about that, in that they have the ability to exist sheerly for their own sake. And perhaps I'm jealous in my own way of their ability to not think about anything but themselves. That is a skill that I currently am working to not necessarily possess, but to understand. My view of the world is strange. I understand that. But why is it strange? Is it strange because I say it's strange, or is it strange because society says it's strange, or is it strange because the world says it's strange? Or is it strange because some unforeseen yet force would proclaim it as strange? What am I? I am a fluctuating being that can create my own truth and future, and yet I still find myself feeling powerless, even though I have the ability to do nearly anything I could think of or want. I find myself thirsting for more than I have, but unwilling so far to try to accomplish things. Not out of fear necessarily, but out of a feeling of generally helplessness, pointlessness. And the thought that life by life will not necessarily end up being useful, which that type of thinking is the thing that leads to its self-propagating truth. If you end up thinking that type of way, you will end up leading that type of life, and you'll end up having your truth come true, as it were. You will end up living your truth. So how do you change this perspective? How do you see the value in places where you hadn't before? How do you become the person that you choose? How do you become something valuable, not only to yourself, but to the world, and in a way where it is useful without being selfish, but also having a degree of selfishness to it, so that you can then more fully understand a objective truth. What is this quote-unquote question that should lead us to some answer that shouldn't really matter? Why are we searching for these things? There are so many other things that we could be doing, and instead we choose to focus on the pointless, because sometimes there is no point. Sometimes all you've got is hope. And sometimes everything that you've been working for will add up to nothing, because that's just how life works. But I don't think that necessarily devalues your time. If you are working towards an end and it gets destroyed, removed, replaced, everything that you've been working for ends up adding up to nothing. That doesn't make you back to zero. You still had an adventure to get to where you are. I am not the person that I was several years ago, and I am not going to be that same person. I'm not going to be the person I am today a year from now, I don't think. Hopefully, I will have incorporated some ideas and theologies, and perhaps there will be the change that I've been looking for exerting itself upon me, and I exerting myself upon it as time progresses.